What if Rome was built on something they never wanted you to know?
What if the greatest empire in human history was built not just on conquest and law, but on rituals so dark they were buried from the record? What if Rome's true power came not from its legions or its senators, but from something far older, far more dangerous that lived beneath the city itself? The Romans were masters of controlling the story. But history is never fully erased, and what was left behind is deeply unsettling. Rome. The very name carries the weight of centuries. An empire that stretched from the cold mists of Britain to the burning deserts of North Africa. A civilization that gave us law, architecture, philosophy, and literature. We've been taught to admire it, but empires are built by human beings. And human beings, especially powerful ones, are capable of extraordinary darkness. This is not about the battles. This is not about Caesar or Augustus. This is about the Rome that hid in plain sight. The rituals behind closed temple doors. The disappearances that never made it to the official records. The punishments that existed outside the law. The cults that the Senate feared more than any invading army. Welcome to Mythic Origins. Tonight we enter the shadows of the Eternal City. Modern archaeologists have known for decades that Rome is not one city. It is many cities layered on top of each other, extending deep underground. Tunnels, chambers, ancient shrines, some dating back over 2,700 years, still run beneath modern streets. But among these discoveries, some chambers have raised questions that mainstream history has struggled to answer. The Romans called the underworld Mundus, literally, world. There was a physical pit in the Roman Forum, the Mundus Cereris, a sacred hole that Romans believed connected the living world to the realm of the dead. 3 times a year this pit was opened. The Romans said that on those days, the dead were allowed to walk among them. Ancient Roman writers described it. Historians have confirmed its existence, but its exact location remains disputed. No excavation team has been allowed full access to what lies beneath the Forum to this day. Is that caution? Or is it something else? Because the underground of Rome doesn't just hold the dead. It holds secrets that the living once chose to bury on purpose. In 186 BC, the Roman Senate did something extraordinary. They passed a decree, the Senatus Consultum de Bacchanalia, that criminalized an entire religious movement across all of Italy. The cult was devoted to Bacchus, the god of wine, ecstasy, and the dissolution of the self. But what the Senate described in their records was far beyond a drinking festival, according to the Roman historian Livy, who was writing 150 years after the event and whose accounts historians acknowledge may carry some exaggeration. The Bacchanalia had grown into something terrifying. Nocturnal ceremonies, initiates inducted as young as 7 years old, ritual violence, accusations of murder, forged wills, and crimes that could never be reported because the perpetrators were supposedly protected by their god. The Senate's response was violent and immediate. Thousands were arrested across Italy. Hundreds were executed. The cult was not merely banned, it was hunted. Modern scholars debate how much of Livy's account was real and how much was Roman propaganda designed to justify a crackdown on a growing foreign religious movement. The truth, as always, lies somewhere in the dark middle. But one fact is beyond dispute. The Roman Senate, the most powerful governing body in the ancient world, was genuinely frightened. And powerful men only panic like that when something real is threatening them. Of all Rome's sacred institutions, none was more revered than the Vestal Virgins. 6 women, chosen between the ages of 6 and 10, sworn to 30 years of celibacy, tasked with keeping the sacred flame of the goddess Vesta eternally burning. They were among the most powerful women in the Roman world. Their word could free a condemned prisoner. Their presence at the games granted them front-row seats beside senators. To touch a Vestal on the street was punishable by death, but break your vow, and what waited for you was something Rome had invented specifically for this moment. Vestal, found guilty of violating her vow of chastity, was led in a funeral procession through the streets of Rome. She was dressed in burial clothes. A litter was prepared as if for a corpse. The city watched in silence. No one was allowed to speak to her. She was then placed into a small underground chamber at the Campus Sceleratus, the Field of Wickedness. The chamber contained a small supply of food, a lamp, a bed, just enough for Rome to maintain the fiction that she was not being executed. Because spilling sacred blood was forbidden, the entrance was sealed. This wasn't legend. This was Roman law documented by multiple historians. Archaeological evidence found near the ancient Colline Gate suggests the existence of such burial chambers. At least 10 Vestals are recorded to have been buried alive in this manner throughout Roman history. It's worth noting that some of these convictions were politically motivated. At least one Vestal was later declared innocent after her execution. By then, of course, it was far too late. This is the part most Roman history books skip. Rome officially condemned human sacrifice. They used accusations of it against their enemies, the Carthaginians, the Celts, the Druids. It was a mark of barbarism, of savagery, of people who had not yet risen to Roman civilization. And yet in 228 BC, following a catastrophic military loss to the Gauls, Roman priests buried alive 2 Gauls and 2 Greeks, a man and a woman from each group, in the Forum Boarium, Rome's cattle market. The ritual was recorded by Plutarch and Livy. It was repeated in 216 BC after the disaster at the Battle of Cannae, when Hannibal nearly destroyed Rome entirely. These weren't fringe events. These were state-sanctioned rituals carried out by the College of Priests in the heart of the city. Roman scholar Pliny the Elder wrote that human sacrifice in Rome was practiced not so very long ago, suggesting that even in his time, in the 1st century AD, the practice had not entirely vanished from memory. A decree officially banning it was only passed in 97 BC, a date that implies the practice existed right up until that point. In 2018, excavations near Pompeii uncovered what appeared to be the remains of a ritual sacrifice. In the Roman port city of Oplontis, researchers discovered skeletal remains positioned in ways that some archaeologists have suggested may indicate sacrifice, though the evidence remains debated. The picture that emerges is this: Rome presented itself as a civilization above barbarism. But when things got bad enough, when the existential threat was real, Rome returned to something older, something that predated their laws, their philosophy, and their image. Rome's emperors lived in a world with no accountability, no independent judiciary, no free press. When you hold absolute power over a civilization of 70 million people, the only thing between your desires and their execution is your own character. Some emperors had remarkable character. Others had almost none. The histories of Suetonius and Cassius Dio describe acts by emperors Caligula, Domitian, and Commodus that go far beyond political cruelty. Historians treat these accounts with varying degrees of reliability, as Roman writers sometimes exaggerated to entertain or please political patrons. But stripped of their most extreme claims, what remains is still profoundly disturbing. We know with historical certainty that Emperor Domitian, who ruled from 81 to 96 AD, once summoned Rome's most prominent senators to a midnight banquet. The room was draped entirely in black. The food was the kind prepared for funeral rites. Slaves painted black served the senators in silence. Each senator was given a grave marker inscribed with his own name. They believed they would not leave alive. They did. Domitian simply wanted them to understand what it felt like to believe he could end them at any moment. The psychological violence was the point. This was Rome's secret terror, not the external threats but the internal rot. The empire's deadliest danger was the man sitting at the center of it.
Ancient.
Is perhaps the most disturbing realization of all. Rome didn't hide its darkness because it was ashamed. Rome hid its darkness because the image of civilization, the idea of Rome as a perfect, rational, ordered empire, was itself a weapon. A weapon used to justify conquest, slavery, and domination. The Roman historian Tacitus, one of the most honest voices of the ancient world, wrote that Rome made a desert and called it peace. He was describing Roman conquest, but the same logic applied inward. Rome created silence and called it civilization. The buried rituals, the forgotten sacrifices, The women sealed underground, the cults hunted by the state. All of it was covered by marble and aqueducts and triumphal arches. The story Rome told about itself was so convincing that we are still telling it today. The question is, how many other empires have done the same? And how much of their darkness are we still carrying without knowing where it came from? The next time you walk through a city with courts and columns, laws and elections, Rome fell. We know the date, 476 AD, when the last Western emperor was deposed by a Germanic chieftain. But empires don't really die. They transform. They pass their habits on numance to great men and their noble wars. Ask yourself what lies underneath. Not everything ancient is wise, and not everything buried is dead. If you want more stories from humanity's forgotten past, the mysteries that didn't make it into the textbooks, subscribe to Mythic Origins. Every week we go deeper,